Israel and Ukraine drag on, the White House said today that in 2024, it aims to continue strengthening our alliance with NATO as well as focus on Indo-Pacific region.
Just today, Jake Sullivan's in Seoul, meeting trilaterally with Japan and South Korea.
And as the White House sends its top national security advisor to South Korea, the State Department has recently raised concerns over China's economic coercion against South Korea, specifically in an incident in which the Chinese embassy in Seoul was using its economic leverage to pressure theaters in Korea to block an American performing arts company called Shenyun. The White House telling me today that China's economic coercion will likely come up in this week's talks. During upcoming talks with counterparts there, is China's economic coercion part of the discussion, and how concerned is the administration about that?
I don't know of too many conversations that we've had with our Korean and Japanese counterparts where in some form or fashion China's economic bullying practices don't come up. So it wouldn't surprise me.
And John Kirby told me that the meetings will be focused on boosting U.S. cooperation with both Japan and South Korea, especially in security and defense. Back to you.
Taking in Muslim extremist immigrants to the United States. Joining us now to react to the debate, we have Libby Krieger, consultant at Communications Council. Libby Krieger, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Of course, Libby, I want to get your analysis of last night's fourth GOP presidential debate. The border has obviously been a huge issue in our country. The candidates were asked if they agreed with Trump's plan to bring back and expand his program to restrict immigration from Muslim countries. Here's what President Trump said in an Iowa town hall in October, as well as what was said at the News Nation debate last night.
If you empathize with radical Islamic terrorists and extremists, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified.
What worries me the most are those that came from Iran, from Yemen, from Lebanon, those areas where they say death to America. That's where you want to be careful.
You had some of the squad wanted to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip. I said, no, we're not taking anyone from Gaza because of the anti-Semitism and because they reject American culture. There's 287G in the law. That is a provision that already allows ICE agents to deputize or allow local law enforcement to enforce those ICE warrants.
So I just want to focus our attention on Vivek Ramaswamy. They're referring to the Immigration and Authority section of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Governor Christie was not asked this question, but it appears that at least Haley and DeSantis agree with President Trump's program. Ramaswamy looks like he wants to enforce existing law. What do you think of their response?
Well, I think it shows that they are speaking in a Republican primary. They know that the Trump base is a big part of those voters, and so they can't say anything that would isolate them from that section of the Republican base. So, of course, they're all going to agree in name with President Trump, kind of having a little bit of nuance depending on their area of expertise. And, DeSantis represents more of the new right GOP, and same with Ramaswamy, whereas Nikki Haley is more of the 2008-2012 old GOP.
Now, the wars in Ukraine and Israel were also hotly debated topics. Here's some more sound.
Who was federally charged with possession of a firearm by a prohibited person.
Congresswoman Grace Mung of New York also said she was disturbed by the incident, especially as Hanukkah was set to begin.
And an update on a college student of Palestinian descent who was shot in Vermont.
Hisham Awatani has now left the hospital. His family says he's currently paralyzed from the chest down as a bullet is lodged in his spine. Awatani is one of 3 childhood friends who graduated from a school in the West Bank.
They now attend colleges in the eastern U.S. According to the family, the 3 were walking to the house of a family member for dinner when they were shot in an unprovoked attack late last month.
Ivy League universities facing backlash over campus anti-Semitism are now facing repercussions. A prominent rabbi and anti-Semitism advisor at Harvard, David Volpe, resigned yesterday, citing painfully inadequate testimony from Harvard President Claudine Gay. He also says the system at Harvard and its ideology grip far too many students and faculty. Volpe says the ideology works only along axes of oppression. He argues that portraying Jews as oppressors and inherently evil is wrong. and makes the entire ideology evil.
Major UPenn donor Ross Stevens says he's withdrawing a $100 million donation. His attorneys say it's because UPenn violated the firm's limited partnership agreement. Stevens' lawyers say the university failed to meet its anti-discrimination and harassment rules. He mentioned UPenn President Liz McGill's recent testimony when she said calls for genocide violate policy based on the context and whether they were directed, pervasive, and severe.
The board of UPenn's Wharton Business School is now calling for McGill's resignation. Earlier, I spoke with Gerard Filippi, senior counsel at the Lawfare Project, for more about the new pressure on these schools. Gerard Filippi, thank you for joining us. What message does this $100 million loss send to UPenn?
Well, it sends the message that donors are fed up with inaction on anti-Semitism. It sends the message that alumni, donors, institutions, just like the U.S. Congress and the American people, are sick and tired of not seeing the administration do anything, that this inaction has consequences. And if the school is unwilling to impose consequences on Jew hate, donors are going to take their money elsewhere and not support an institution that's failing the school to do something. This is an effect that the donation lack is having.
And when you say do something, what could that look like?
It looks like action, not the words that we saw in the congressional testimony the other day. It means enforcing policies against bigotry and hate. It includes imposing consequences on all of these students that we've seen practically rioting on college campuses, yelling genocidal chants against Jewish students. Imposing consequences is not just making statements. It's actually expelling students, suspending students, making it clear that this kind of behavior is unacceptable. And until donors and the public see that, the pressure will continue on these presidents.
All right, Gerard, let's turn our attention to Harvard. Their prominent rabbi, David Volpe, from Harvard's anti-Semitism board, in an ex-post, he called Harvard President Dr. Claudine Gay's testimony at Congress painfully inadequate. What happened at that hearing?
The hearing was an opportunity for these presidents to come and explain what measures they're taking to protect Jewish students, what measures they're taking to protect minority students and enforce their civil rights. But what we saw instead was prevarication, prepared statements probably written by lawyers that didn't say anything, and a blatant refusal to answer direct questions like, is genocide wrong, or are genocidal chants calling for the deaths of Jews improper conduct on college campuses? Seeing that conduct, seeing these statements made by university professors so disgusted people, including the rabbi, that they're now taking action. The rabbi, I think, resigned yesterday over this.
And in his post, Rabbi Volpe called out an ideology at Harvard that, quote, works only along axes of oppression and places Jews as oppressors. What's he talking about here?
There is no doubt in anyone's mind that if you are on Harvard's campus calling for the genocide of African Americans, you will face consequences. If you're misgendering people, you will face consequences. But calling for the death of Jews has no consequences. That's the hierarchy of oppression. Jews are not seen as a protected class at Harvard, which is blatantly illegal because under the Civil Rights Act, they are entitled to protection as a minority people.
And what can colleges do to respond to this?
Colleges need to impose consequences. They need to make it clear that conduct that's intimidating, threatening, and harassing to any students, but now especially to Jewish students, is unacceptable and has consequences. If you're going around a college campus chanting intifada, which is a call for genocide, you need to be expelled. You need to face punishment, not to be allowed to continue doing this now for over 2 months since Gaza attacked Israel. This is what colleges need to do: impose consequences, uphold the law, and enforce the rules so that Jewish students and all students are kept safe.
All right.
Stockpilings and strip. On Wednesday, the IDF found long-range rockets, drones, and even ready-to-use explosive devices, all found in a residential area near a school and a medical clinic. Now, people may be wondering how these weapons actually get into Gaza, which shares one border with Israel, a smaller border with Egypt, which has restrictions making it difficult for Gazans to enter, and its other border is the sea, which is fortified by the Israeli Navy. According to reports dating back to 2014, weapons are smuggled into Gaza from Egypt through underground tunnels connected to the Gaza Strip. The IDF recently released footage inside the Hamas tunnels of the deputy commander of the Northern Gaza Brigade, Wael Rajab. Here he is, meeting with other Hamas commanders inside the tunnels. The ones circled in red have been killed, significantly damaging Hamas's capabilities to operate. But civilians continue to be caught in the crossfire, something sadly expected to happen in urban warfare, this time in Rafah, near Gaza's border with Egypt.
We were sitting and 3 strikes hit at once. We started running. We saw that they hit Omar's house that is full with displaced people.
Israel has asked residents to evacuate to 3 designated safe zones in Rafah, but were unable to immediately confirm if the IDF warned residents to evacuate this area. It's a difficult war to fight as Hamas terrorists have embedded themselves with the civilian population, and Israel continues to warn civilians to evacuate, but still some don't leave. However, Israel continues pressing forward to defeat Hamas and also says it's doing everything it can to rescue the remaining 138 hostages in Hamas captivity. These 2 parents are one of the lucky families who were able to reunite with their daughter who was held hostage by Hamas. Her dad explains the moment she was kidnapped from her neighborhood.
From what my daughter said, she was worried that something would happen to the dog if she left her behind. So what she did was she put her under her pajamas jacket when they got into the vehicle and they were driven out.
And into the Hamas tunnels she went, still holding her dog.
And when they came out of the tunnel, they had to climb up a ladder. That's when Hamas people noticed that this was not a doll, it was a living, breathing dog. And a bit of an argument ensued, and it was decided to let her keep the dog instead of leave it behind in a bird cage.
And several weeks later, they were released. Mia said her dog gave her moral support while in captivity. However, Mia also mentioned that she still has 2 relatives in Hamas captivity. She said everyone needs to do their part to bring all of the hostages home. Jason Perry, NTD News.